Welcome to TSG Live Model Railroading, a program to share ideas and ask fellow modelers about their approach to the hobby. Sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired.
All right, and welcome to TSG Live Model Railroading. I'm John, your host, as usual. And you heard what Seth said in the intro, prepare to be inspired. We have model railroaders on quite frequently, and today is no exception. We're going to be talking to Bernard Hellen of miniprints. You know miniprints, they do all kinds of really cool 3D prints for super detailing layouts. These are usually things that you haven't seen before and things that nobody makes. So why don't we bring Bernard on and we'll get started in earnest. Good morning, Bernard. How are you today?
Good morning, John. I'm wonderful. I'm fine. Thanks so much for having me.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming. I think we're going to have a good conversation here. Looks like you're in the layout room.
I am. I'm down in the train room.
Cool. Well, why don't you give people an idea about you, who you are, what you do, and why you do mini prints?
Sure. Well, that's fantastic. I've got a little presentation, which I can fire up in a few minutes. But basically, I'm a modeler who's been modeling for, I guess, 7 years now. A little late to the modeling party, but picked it up about 7 years ago. I've got a basement size HO scale model railroad, and I'll give you a quick turnaround here. So I'm in the layout room. So I'm in a room that's about 30 feet by 10 feet.
Oh. And
I model the Quebec-Gatineau Railway, which is a Genesee and Wyoming short line. And I model from Montreal to Quebec City. That's the portion that I model. And it's somewhat prototypical. I mean, I've moved a few things around, but all the industries on the layout are pretty much, real industries. And yeah, this is where I like to hang out when I'm not hanging out with a 3D printer.
That's pretty cool. So I'm a little bit curious now about the layout. I didn't hear. Did you mention the era?
Current day freight operations.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, so it's a short line. It's a Genesee and Wyoming short line that interchanges with the CN and the CP. And I really like the last mile. Like that to me is really interesting model railroading. If I was an N scale, maybe I would do unit trains. But I'm an HO, so I really like switching. Mm-hmm. So I've got a paper mill on the layout. I've got a cement works on the layout. I've got auto unloading, which exists on the prototype. The port of Trois-Rivières, which is sort of smack dab in between Montreal and Quebec City, is a fully functional port, one of the larger ports, actually, on the St. Lawrence River.
Very cool.
And there's a lot of stuff going in and out of there. So that's kind of the focus point of my layout. So, goods will come in from Montreal. I'll do some switching. They'll go out to Quebec City and vice versa. It's set up for operations, or it will be set up for operations if I ever get there.
Very cool. Yeah. Now I'm noticing that there's a lot of C's in the connecting railroads there. So I'm going to assume, I know the answer, but I'm going to say it anyway, that you are also a Canadian. Right?
I am, eh?
Yeah, I was going to say you haven't even said A yet once.
Yeah, well, I'll say about and roof and, and all the things that I'm supposed to say.
Right. But I promise not to call you a hoser, though. I saved that for some Canadians, but I know that for some people it's an insult, and it's not intended to be if I say that.
I mean, we're almost time to move into beer, but it's coffee right now, so.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So
I tend to go coffee until noon, and then there's a little awkward pause between 12 and 1 o'clock our time, and then you go into the beer. So we're in the time right now.
So are you drinking Molson, eh? Or
whatever we got, eh?
Blatz, I think, is another one, if I'm not mistaken, or is that a northern
There's
US
all
one?
sorts of good stuff. Yes, Labatt's is another one.
Oh, Labatt's, is that what it is? From over here thinking Blatz. I don't know.
Blah blah. So I'm located in the Great White North, and you'll see that sort of reflected, I think, in a lot of what I've produced for mini prints, because really everything that I've done for mini prints, at least the early stuff, has started out with stuff that I specifically wanted for my own layout. Very cool. There's a portion on my layout which I'll show you in a minute when I fire up the presentation, where mini prints was born, and it was born out of this need for things for myself. So this is a one-man band. This is I kind of fell into it by mistake. I don't have I'm not a large corporate 3D printing company that just added miniatures on the side. This is stuff that I wanted, because I'm a modeler, and then it sort of got completely out of control, which you'll soon see.
I remember when I first noticed mini prints coming on the scene, and I thought that, if I remember right, the story there was that you wanted a beaver or something, and that nobody made beavers. So you're like, well, I'm just going to make a beaver. And it just kind of grew from there, right? So,
yeah, I mean, if you don't get too nauseous, I mean, I've got slides of this, but if it's not too jarring, I'll show you the area.
Yeah, let's take a look.
I'll apologize to everyone for the Blair Witch Project cinematography here.
Here, let me even make it bigger so people can see better. Right. Of course, I have to figure out how to do that on this amazing. There it is.
Okay. So here is my iconic Canadian Beaver Lodge scene.
Oh, cool.
On the layout. And you're not going to see it, it really well. But I built the Beaver Lodge. And then I went looking for the HO scale beaver. Okay, so you can see there's the scene. So I'll bring you back without trying to cause too much seasickness. So I built the lodge because, they really are all over the place. It is the national animal of Canada. I mean, you might have seen there's here. I mean, it's on the crest of the Canadian Pacific. The beaver is everywhere. We even have them, and I kid you not, in downtown Toronto. There's a very funny, I have it on my Facebook page, but there's a very funny incident that happened within the last year where a beaver, and I kid you not, got onto our subway system. Now, Toronto is the third largest city in North America by population. This is not a small town. We've got, I think I don't know whether we're tied with Chicago or whatever for population in the actual city proper, not the GTA. And it's a big city. We've got a big subway, and a beaver wandered out of a creek bed into a subway station and literally stopped the city's subway system. So we've got beavers. We got them around, and I couldn't believe, and this goes back about 4 or 5 years ago. I typed in HO beaver in the internet on the Google search, and by the way, don't do that. You'll have some explaining to do.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine what you found.
It was not what I was looking for, but it also wasn't what I was looking for, because they existed in O scale, but they didn't exist in HO scale. So, that's not funny. Why are you laughing, John?
No, I'm just, I was thinking what you said you looked for Ho beaver. And I was thinking, I wasn't even thinking of Ho, because HO is Ho. You know what I'm getting at. Oh, that's good.
I have no idea what you're talking about, John. I don't know where your mind went.
You forgot the scale part. That might have gotten you some different results.
Anyway, after explaining the situation to my wife and apologizing to the internet, nobody made them. And this is crazy. I mean, it is the national animal of Canada. As I said, it's on the CP crest. So I'm a graphic designer by trade. I've run my own design agency for the last 25 plus years. And I thought, how hard can this be? If I can design in 2D, I can design in 3D. So I back then, this was, as I say, 4 or 5 years ago. I created a little something. I sent it off to a large online company. And 2 weeks later, some incredibly expensive tiny pieces of plastic arrived. So I was able to complete the scene back there.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to 18 months ago. So this started April 1st of 2020.
No joke.
Yeah. The company did start. There's a story about that as well. So the company started on April Fool's Day a year and a half ago. And I got one of these really inexpensive resin printers. I run an Elegoo Mars, and I know that'll probably come up in the questions or the conversation. And so I got one of these inexpensive 3D printers. And up until now, I'd always been interested in 3D printing, but I wasn't crazy about either the price point. I didn't want to spend $1,000 or $2,000 on one of them.
Right.
And I wasn't crazy about the quality, because up until recently, there was this printing technology called FDM, and it was the prominent one. And it just wasn't, my kids, would play with it at summer camps. They'd print out the head of a Yoda, or something like that. But it wasn't the detail that you need in, HO scale. These new resin printers came down in price, and they were a quality that was such. I thought, for a couple $100, I'll try one out. $300 Canadian, it's $200 US, $250 US. I'll give it a shot. And that's really then, of course, the one beaver led to multiple beavers. I started printing them and giving them to friends, and that's the origin story right there. Interestingly, my graphic design business, because I was working with small independent brick and mortar Main Street customers, my design business went to zero a year and a half ago. It died. I was a victim of, in Toronto, we were really locked down. We just actually came out of lockdown, believe it or not, this Friday.
Oh boy.
Pretty much. Yeah. So we've really been in our basements for 18 months.
Yeah. Well, it's good that they're taking it seriously, though, because it seems, I don't want to get off on a complete tangent here, but it seems like we here to the south of you were in such a big rush to reopen everything so fast that we did. And I was just reading this morning that nothing's changed, nothing's stopped. There are a lot of people that are vaccinated now, but there are still a lot of new cases, especially of this new Delta variant. So
yeah, well, as I say, we won't go there, but yes. But I was stuck in a basement, and I started printing stuff, and I made the mistake, I guess, in quotes, of posting my little HO scale, said the word scale beavers, on Facebook, and said, hey, I'm doing these. And then unbeknownst to me, hey, can I get some? Can I get some? Are you selling those? The order started coming in. And it was never, ever my intention to start making prints. Actually, interestingly, I was going to go the opposite way. I thought if I was going to start a company, I was going to do freight car loads. I even registered the domain bigloads.com.
Oh boy, you've got all the interesting searching.
So I was going to go the other way. I was going to do, really large, freight car loads with, I probably have one kicking around somewhere in the layout room, but pipes and stuff like that. And then this little mini print thing just started taking off. The design business tanked due to, being everyone stuck at home and no business. And then organically, things just started, I became an accidental, reluctant model railroad manufacturer.
Mm-hmm. And, I think you said the right word, organically, because the whole thing is very organic, even from your very first print being something that you needed for your railroad. So I like that. There's something that there's an honesty about that sometimes is not present in the business world, where people are just doing stuff to make money, right?
Yeah, everything that you'll see on mini prints, and I think what I'll do today is I'll take you through a little bit of the origin story, which I just did. Then we've got the main attraction, which I think is probably why people are here. And I'll talk a little bit about, it's a show and tell basically, of going down the rabbit hole, which we'll talk about, and why people super detail. And then if there's interest and time allows, I'd love to go online and just do a little mini prints web tour. And what you'll see on the miniprints.com website is every single thing there is either something that I personally wanted for my layout or a request that's come in, someone saying, I see you do a little, HO scale beaver. Can you do a moose? Or, what I'd really love for my layout is, here, let me see if I could do it. A swan, right? Actually I built a little box. I don't know if it's going to work, but here, there's like,
oh yeah, that works quite well, actually.
Yeah. Let me turn them towards the camera. But, so everything, this was a request. So everything on the website is either someone saying, gee, I want, or, can you make, or something. I'll do another quick show and tell. This is one of my most popular mini prints.
Oh, the dude on, yeah, that was the thumbnail that I used.
That's
for
the thumbnail that you used. Yeah. So here it is live in color. So this was because I model modern day freight operations. And
I like that he even has the walkie-talkie on it. That's cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and I wanted modern day freight figures, but I couldn't find them. There's a lot of stuff, and there are lots of companies making great things. I'll never disparage, but I didn't want some guy that looked like he hopped out of a 1930s European steam engine. I wanted something that looked modern day freighty for my own layout.
Right. Thus the vest and the hard hat and the walkie-talkie, right?
Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff. So, and then of course, so that what I showed you was Custom Cruise #1, which then of course led to Custom Cruise #2, which you'll see, which led to #3, which led to #4, which led to people saying, can you do, this, this, and this? So, it becomes daunting.
Yeah. Well, but like I was saying before, I when we were talking about having you on as a guest, and I know I told you this, I don't want to turn the show into an ad for mini prints, but this is all relevant to the entire story. And I think it's good to be talking about where it all came from and why it all happened, because I do think that if people understand being a model railroader first and foremost, which was a little banner that I created for this, I think that makes a difference, because the motivation there, at least to me, it matters.
Yeah.
I've been doing these videos now since like 2005 about trains, and I've always liked trains. And I was never really, just speaking personally, I was never really a big model railroader. Like, I don't care about getting certificates or anything like that, but I do enjoy it. And I dabble with DCC, and I like to go run trains and do operations. So coming from that perspective, I think that might be one of the reasons why people like the videos that I do, because I'm not someone just making the videos to try to, so I get it. You know what I'm saying? I understand this organic growth, or this organic sort of genesis of where it all started. And I appreciate that.
It also, for me anyway, it comes down to the fact that this is, first and foremost, this is fun. And yes, Cindy is saying, I even have skeletons and forensic workers. And you'll see that there's a lot of stuff that's odd and weird and fun and silly. I mean, I've got a pooping pup. I've got, a dog that's, because you'd never see that, So, and so I think the business philosophy is really threefold. One, it has to be fun. Two, it has to be original and new. because I don't want to copy what other people have done. I mean, there are a lot of propane tanks out there. I don't feel the need to generate another 3D propane tank. Like, people have asked me, can I do firecracker antennas or battery boxes or propane cylinders, or, or welding cylinders or air tanks? And that exists. Like, there's lots of great people, and I would never step on someone's toes. Like, I don't want to recreate the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to come up with stuff that's fun. I want to come up with stuff that's original and new. And most importantly, this is like, and I call it craftsman quality. It's a labor of love. I mean, this is more a passion project than it is a business.
Right.
It takes a tremendous amount of time to put an order together. I mean, I don't even want to calculate the numbers on it, financially, but it's very much, I view these things as sort of fun, tiny little works of art going out the door.
And they are. It's like little sculptures, right? I mean, there's something really cool about that. One thing I was really impressed by when we were talking a couple of days ago, off camera, was the fact that you don't just throw the thing in a box and say, here you go, you can clean it up yourself. Yeah. You actually clean the things up yourself using this.
Yeah.
Right.
Go get mine and we can stare at each other through our optimizers.
Right. So I mean, that's cool. So that when something comes to me, all I have to do is paint it. Right. I mean,
well, and I'm obsessive about that. I mean, there's a little bit of OCD, perfectionism, whatever you want to call it. But, when you get things off the printer and when you're 3D printing, you have to put a lot of supports on them. So it's probably not showing up great, but here's Bigfoot. And, Bigfoot, I mean, this is not manufacturing like injection molding or, this is not, there are not machines running 24 hours a day spitting this stuff out. It's not like, molded manufacturing, pop it into a box, thousands of people in China, putting these things out. This is like, you create it, you print it, and pretty much all of my orders are printed on demand. So, as you order it, I'll then create it or like print it out. But, Bigfoot here, Sasquatch dude, comes out with all these supports, which are necessary. But I don't want him to go out the door like that. I want him to go out the door, and you'll never see this. Here's the N scale version. I want him to go out the door as perfect as I can make him, or her, in this case, actually, she's a she. So that when you get it, you don't have to have the frustration. You just have the fun, not the frustration.
Yeah, they're ready to run.
Yeah, I'm a little bit obsessive that way.
Yeah, I think that is a good practice, though, that I'm sure people who order from you appreciate, because they're like, well, I don't have to do any work other than painting it. That's great. Yeah.
And if you do paint it and you break it, I'll replace it for free, because I want people to have fun with it. So we have all sorts of breakage guarantees, because these things are small. And, obviously, if it comes in the post, and occasionally the mail likes to play volleyball with these things. So, if it arrives, obviously, we'll replace it immediately for free. But if you're painting it, or, you're placing it on the layout and it hits the carpet and you step on it, I'll still give you a new one for free. You just have to pay the postage for it.
Yeah.
So, because I want people to have fun with it. It's a hobby. That's the most important thing. It's supposed to be fun.
Right. And they say that if you're not having fun with your hobby, you're not doing it right. So help people have fun. Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Okay. So, wow, we've, that's a long intro, isn't it?
Though, look, it's okay, Bernard. These are conversations more than anything else. We should probably I know that you have a presentation. We should get to that, but during the presentation, don't be surprised if I ask you questions, because that's just the format that we use here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see there's some comments, that, Jeff mentions that I do Scottish bagpipers. And just to reiterate, those have all been requests. So in that case, things like that, like some of the fun, weird stuff, like the bagpipers, have been, people going, hey, I see you've got X, can you do Y? And in most instances, the answer is, I don't know, let me try that. I won't do certain things, like I'll get a lot of requests for stuff that's trademarked.
Oh yeah.
And I really don't want Disney coming after me because I've done Beauty and the Beast or whatever, So there are certain no-fly zones. There were some people that wanted some things that were, well, let's say they'd be funny stories, but I won't tell them. So questionable things. But, as long as I think it's got a little bit of sales potential, or other people would want them, or I want them too, I'm really open to requests.
Well, I have a question about requests before we go to the presentation, which is, say I had a request. Say I wanted you to make a 3D print of me trackside with my camera.
Yes.
My video camera, right? And
Yeah.
I want to have one in HO scale, and I want to have one in N scale. That way I can go put it at the local museum that I belong to.
Yeah.
As, oh, look, John's on the layout.
Yeah.
Doing a chasing trains episode.
Sure.
What would you need from me to try to do something like that? Is a picture enough, or do you need like pictures from different angles?
Sure.
Or what?
So number one, that's a great idea. I love it. And if you want generic guy, HO scale guy with video camera, then that's no problem whatsoever. I can do that relatively easily and quickly. And at HO scale, it's going to be, someone of your general description holding a video camera. All I would need from you is sort of a prototypical photograph. This is kind of the pose I want. This is kind of the type of camera I want, that type of thing. If you want something that is actually you, then it becomes, a little bit more difficult. Then you've got to fly me down to California and I can body scan you, which I've done recently.
Oh, right. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. I've seen those. I've seen that around a lot, actually. That was a good one.
Yeah. So if you're happy with a sort of, and honestly at HO scale, it's, if you want a guy with a video camera, I just did a rail fan on the website I'll show you, which is someone holding up like a 35 millimeter, like DSLR or 35 millimeter camera.
Yeah. I'll give you some ideas about that maybe sometime later when we can talk off, because I do have a specific, I have kind of a look is only just because that's what I wear when I'm out rail fanning. I wear a hat with a thing in the back to shade your neck, and usually a shade shirt. So it really could be anybody as long as they have the hat and the shirt, and then the colors of the hat and the shirt is what would make it look like me.
Exactly. And so when I evaluate sort of requests like that, my first question is it doable? And that's doable. My second thought is, okay, can someone provide me a little bit of detail of like the photograph? So that's a yes. Will it sell? Because I'll be honest, the list of things to do right now are longer than lifetimes. Like, I mean, there's more to design than I can possibly do. So I'm getting a lot of fantastic ideas that are doable, but it's a one-off. And I just, at this point, don't have time to do a one-off. But, someone with a video camera, absolutely. That's something that can go on any layout, and I'd love it on my layout. So that's a project that's doable. If it's easy, it goes to the top of the list. If it's fun, it goes to the top of the list. If it's weird or odd, it goes to the top of the list. And most importantly, if it's worth spending the time on it, then it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. I don't know, honestly, how much demand you'd have for a model of me out chasing trains, but something to think about anyway.
You will officially be known as guy number one with video camera.
Just don't make me a number two and we'll be fine. I have some ideas of who you could make number two, though.
Well, it's interesting because I released the guy with the 35 millimeter rail fan, and then I immediately got requests for, can you have him holding up his cell phone?
Oh, right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, so yeah, I mean, it all comes down to time.
Do me a favor, though. If you do guys with cell phones, make sure that they're holding the cell phone like this and not like this.
Yeah,
that's the way we need to. We need to give people the right idea of how to take pictures. As subliminal as it may be on a mini prints print.
I'm hip to the groove. Yep, we'll do that.
Cool.
Okay,
Well,
so
let's see what you got.
Yeah, let's fire up. So I'm going to share screen right now. I've got a little presentation. My screen will go full screen with my presentation. So if you would be so kind as to let me know what you can see and if you can see, that would be great. So hang on 1 second.
As soon as it pops up, I'll put it on our screen so everybody can see. I'm very interested in hearing what you're going to talk about. So I'm anxious.
All right. Well, this is good. We're going down the rabbit hole. So let's go to StreamYard. Let's go to share. Let's go to share screen. Let's go to window. Here we go. And then it will go full screen. All right. What do you see? Do you see?
I see a finger and a goose.
That is the most popular mini prints animal, believe it or not, is the Canada goose.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think it's because they're everywhere, whether it's at a northern lake or a downtown parking lot, whether it's Minnesota or Montreal, they seem to be everywhere, and they really are quite nasty. So yeah,
I do want to mention something real quick, that during the time while we're going through your presentation, at least for you, the questions that get highlighted won't show up on your screen. So if anybody asks a question, I'll see it and I'll let you know what it is. Okay.
Sure. And you know what? I just thought of something. I've got my cell phone here. So maybe, just maybe, and let's see if I can do this. If I fire up YouTube with no volume, because I know the volume screws things up.
Oh, I see what you're thinking. Use your YouTube on your phone as a monitor. That's a good idea.
There you go. So I've got two. So if you see me look over here, so I see D&H Railroad Model Western Australia says, do you offer pre-painted figures for people that are not able to do themselves? And the answer to that right now is no, I don't. But I'll answer it in two ways. I'm trying to convince my 15-year-old son, who is a better painter than I am, to make some money this summer painting for me. He seems to prefer playing video games. So that is a fight that I have not won yet, but there's the possibility of it. Number two, there is a painting clinic on the website, which I will show you if and when we get to the website. And it's not as hard as you think. And three, if you do have shaky hands or poor eyesight, as some of us do, then, find a friend or someone who can do it for you. But right now, it's a good point. All the mini prints come unpainted at this point. And part of the reason too is that I'm an okay painter, but there are a lot of really great painters out there. And some people have painted their mini prints in ways that I never, ever would have thought of. And they're just spectacular.
Yeah. I think having them unpainted leaves the options open for people who want to customize more. So I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. That's the idea behind it. But I do recognize that, there are times when, these are small, and they can be difficult to paint for sure. Yeah. Okay. So we make small things. That's why the company is called Mini Prints. So this is, I think, one of our smaller mini prints and one of my favorites. It's the pileated woodpecker. This has got to be our smallest, our HO scale crabs, which really are tiny, and really fun if you're doing a crab scene, and our cow skulls. So these are the types of things that when I said the weirder, the smaller, the more unusual, the better. That's what I was meaning. As I had previously mentioned, want to talk really about three things today. The mini print story, which I think we've covered pretty well. The down the rabbit hole presentation, which isn't really a presentation. It's more a question, which we'll get to next. And then the tour of the website. Cool. So this is me, in case you were wondering. And this is the line that I modeled, the Quebec Gatineau Railroad. And this was taken probably about 5 years ago in Quebec City. So that's what it looks like. This is the layout, which you've seen. Here's actually a static photograph. So you can get a sort of a better sense of what it looked like when the photo was taken. One of the negatives I will say about becoming an accidental model railroad manufacturer is I honestly have been down in the layout room twice in the past year, once today and once for a previous presentation. So I spend about 15 hours a day with the 3D printer, and it's become a hobby unto itself, which is great. It's very creative, but the layout has definitely suffered. So one day I will say, this weekend I'm going down to the layout room and actually do some work.
Wonder if you could convince your son to run the printer, maybe that, or cleaning up the supports off the things. Maybe that he'd do that.
Yeah, well,
maybe not for 15 hours a day though. Yeah, never mind.
There are a lot of, as everyone knows who has teenagers, there's lots of competition out there. Video games, girls, outside, you name it,
Yeah.
Everything's a little bit more exciting than this, but not for me. Anyway, there's the area that I talked about that you've already seen. And that should slowly bring us towards the main attraction. So let's see if I can get to the main attraction. There we go.
Okay.
So down the rabbit hole.
Looks like you're writing a book for kids.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting you say that because, and I'm just going to refer, I've got a few notes here. So if you see me look down, I'm going notes. You can also go full screen on this if you want, because if you want to go full screen on the presentation, it might be more interesting than people seeing me.
Sure. It's full screen now.
There you go.
Look at us at all.
Yeah, let's do that. No one needs to see my mug.
Then you can look at your notes and nobody will know you're looking at your notes, right?
Exactly. It's the hidden mystery behind the scene. So going down the rabbit hole is subtitled Why We Do What We Do. And I'll tell you where I got this idea from. And obviously brought to you by Miniprints. So the idea behind this really comes from a book that was written 156 years ago. So I'm wondering if there you go. So there's this book called Alice in Wonderland, and 156 years ago, Lewis Carroll wrote this childhood classic. And in the opening chapter of this book, and I have to say, I'm embarrassed, I've actually never read it, but I started thinking about it, and it all started because I Googled this term, down the rabbit hole. And I'm like, where did that come from? And it came from this book. So Alice follows the white rabbit down the rabbit hole, and it transported her into his burrow, and they went to this strange world of Wonderland. And that's the origin of the term going down the rabbit hole. And the term, of course, means spending more time than one had originally intended on a project. And I thought, wow, that seems kind of appropriate. That makes sense, because we really do go down the rabbit hole, when we're talking about super detailing a scene. So I want you guys to join me, in this story. I guess I'm the white rabbit, and we're going to follow, go down the rabbit hole into the surreal world of super detailing a model railroad scene. And when I started thinking about this, I'm selling, these little tiny pieces of plastic, and, people are using them to create these amazing scenes on their layout. And I thought, why? Why do we spend so much time and so much money obsessively trying to recreate, this perfect little scene on our layout? So I've got a really great Facebook group, and I think you threw the link up earlier, and I'd encourage, if anyone hasn't followed it, to check it out, because there are about 3,000 people on it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the group and I said, hey guys, I'm doing this little sort of thought experiment, everybody. Why do you super detail a scene? Why do you obsessively go down the rabbit hole and add all these wonderful details? And what came out were really 8 themes. So this presentation, which is really a work in progress, are the stories that people shared on the Facebook group about why they really like to go down the rabbit hole and super detail a scene. So what I'll be showing you here is sort of, I'll divide these 8 themes down, show you some real world pictures of how people have used their mini prints, and then add in some commentary that people commented on that Facebook post. And as a quick aside, a lot of companies that create details show pictures of them, like with a penny for scale or something like that, which is great. You see how small they are. I usually use a finger. But what I think is even better, and what I really like to do, is show real life examples of customers using the mini prints to make a scene come alive. And that's kind of our tagline, is make your model railroad layout come alive. So that's what you're going to see here. So the themes that came up on sort of the Facebook group was, by super detailing a scene, you're telling a story. In so doing, that draws you in to the actual layout. It then sets your layout in a specific time and place. So it establishes for the viewer where and when you are. That makes your layout more believable and more real. In so doing, by making it more believable and real, you're creating a connection with the person looking at your layout. So I thought that was interesting. We'll go through each of these. Another point that came up is that it lets your imagination and creativity loose. So just as Cindy mentioned earlier, they've got skeletons and CSI forensic. That's fun for a modeler. To really say, hey, this is different. I can do something different here. It challenges the modeler's skill, which you'll see some crazy, in a good way, things that people have done. And I think the point that is the most important for me, so I made it last, is it makes this whole crazy endeavor fun.
Yeah. Or more fun, right?
More fun. Yeah. So that's where I'm going with this. So sound like you want to go down the rabbit hole here?
Yeah. You got me hooked so far.
All right. So let's talk about telling a story. So Tim Adams came up with this quote on the Facebook group. And he said, "Not scenes for me, but stories. Signs on buildings and elsewhere are like credits in a movie. And details, figures, animals, and other things tell stories and depict themes. Not always, but sometimes." I thought that was interesting.
That actually makes sense, because people do put buildings on layouts in honor of their friends who helped them with their layouts, right?
Exactly.
Like Bernard's, auto shop or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
3D printing shop.
I thought of that as I was saying auto shop.
Exactly. And I hope that you're seeing the photo credits here, because my presentation is photo credits that people have sent me as examples of their work that they've graciously allowed me to share.
Yeah, this one's by Serge.
Yeah, that illustrate the theme. And then the quotes are from different people. So John Sharp says that on this theme, it helps to tell a story of what you're trying to show. It also makes it more believable. The more details that are there, the better it shows. Also, it's fun making little scenes and getting people try and figure it, like an eagle going after a snake. Or this wonderful scene that Maddie sent me. You can see blurred out in the distance there is a fisherman, and you can see a bunch of river otters. Remember, these are all mini prints, so those are our little HO scale river otters that are just sort of sneaking up on the fishermen that are going to steal the catch of the day.
Right.
So that's stuff like that. I love stuff like that. Here's a fantastic scene, and remember, we're telling a story here. Of just, someone's front yard, and, they've got the garden gnomes, or the deer buck mounted on the side of the house, or the dogs, the cats, these are all mini prints. So things like that. These details draw you in. They really draw you into the scene. It's like John Grant says, it's like a painting. And I love this quote. John Grant said, it's like a painting. You add some light blue to a canvas and that's it. Light blue on a canvas. But if you add some tan, some brown, some green, some yellow, orange, and red, now what you have is someone looking past a tree, watching the sunset into the ocean. The details finish the painting and the story. Now, instead of just looking at a building and walking on by, you stop and look and it draws you into the picture.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a great example from Ray. Ray says, what draws people, not model railroaders, into a scene is the inclusion of figures and critters. We can admire the craftsmanship of a well-detailed alleyway, but what draws you in is the figures, a couple making out a drug deal, a cop making an arrest, somebody putting out the trash, dogs or cats or rats or pigeons in the trash. As others have noted, those figures tell a story and draw us into the scene as we try and figure out what that story is. And here's a brilliant example of it by Jeff. I mean, the guy on the ATV and the gentleman standing looking at you, not the gentleman standing facing away, unfortunately, but those two figures are mini prints. And I love this scene because there's a conversation going on. And is it confrontational? Is it a bunch of friends getting together? It allows your imagination to go wild here. Like, what are these guys talking about? John Kanako says, we try and make our layouts as realistic as possible so we get immersed in our own little world.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And then I guess the last one in this notion here of this theme is that Bruce Leckie says, I use the details to create a mini scene. There are many of these mini scenes scattered over the layout. The eye travels from scene to scene and is pulled into the scene by the details. And I love this point. Listen to this. That creates the impression of the layout being larger than it is and forces the viewer to linger and savor. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Linger and savor. Isn't that great?
It is. And that does happen, especially with smaller, super detailed layouts. You could spend hours looking at a small layout, whereas a large layout that's not super detailed like that may be impressive when you walk in, but when you realize how sparse the details are, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, that was fun. Let's go.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm not saying that one is better or worse. Like there are plywood Pacifics that I've been to where the guys are totally into operations and it's all about getting cars from A to B. And that's what floats their boat. That's what, turns their crank. That's fine. There's room for all different approaches in this hobby. And this is what turns me on. So that's why I'm sharing the super detailing part. It's just what I like. I love scenery. I mean, as I've heard other people say, for me, the trains are actors, on the stage. So to me, the trains are part of it, but honestly, I'd be just as happy perhaps super detailing a scene and, just having a train in the background.
Yeah. Diorama building is a big deal these days. So yeah. It
is. And especially, and it's funny, I was having this conversation recently, as more and more people move into apartments, either because they're downsizing or because I know in Toronto, where I live, my kids are going to have to live at home or kill us to get the house because, it's just so expensive to get a place. More and more people are deciding they want to get into model railroading, but they're not going to wait until they have the perfect basement. So they're just going to build something now and they're going to build a module. So I see that as, a lot of people are doing really interesting, module work or starting small, and you can afford the time and the money to really go deep if you're doing, one module that's 2 feet by 4 feet.
Yeah.
So
there's a question. Yeah, there's a question. There's some confusion about whether you're getting the quotes from the mini prints page or because your mini prints page is actually a Facebook group, right? It's not a company page.
Oh,
right?
My mini prints page is a Facebook page. It's not a group.
Oh, okay. So it is just a page. Okay.
It is a page. Yeah. So if you, and I post a lot, so I apologize, you'll have to probably go down a bit. But if you go down and I can, when I stop sharing my screen, find the exact date, there was a post where I went, hey, hive mind, hey, smarter people out there on the internet, I'm thinking of exploring this topic. What do you think? And there's a very large post of people talking about this. So you'll see all of these quotes are pulled from that post on the Miniprints page, which is a page on Facebook at facebook.com/miniprints3D.
Right.
I'm sure that's clear as mud.
It made sense to me. So,
There you go. Yeah. And it is a page, and I do post frequently. And interestingly, one of the things that I do post, hopefully most frequently, are these types of pictures that people share with me, because honestly, nothing makes me happier. Honestly, the only thing that really keeps me doing this, the real fun part, is seeing what people do with them. Because when they leave here, they're wonderful little bits of potential. And when they get onto people's layout and they paint them and they place them, seeing what everybody interprets it, fantastic.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Which brings us to setting your layout in a specific time and place. For example, like mine. Now, this is not mine, but, is it modern day freight operations? Like the things like you said that give it away is, the walkie-talkie, the radio, setting, Ricky Keel says, setting a believable and plausible scene and story. For example, I have a module based on typical agricultural co-op town in the Midwest. My structures vary from old to new to even abandoned. Adding all the supporting actors really sells the idea, including birds eating spilled grain around the elevator. You've succeeded when someone absolutely knows where the location is, even if it's either generic or a conglomeration of prototype-based scenes. Once again, this is, I think, some of the best modeling I've seen come from Sebastian. I mean, some of the things he does, they're just so incredibly photorealistic, and that's what turns my crank. I mean, the stuff I love, and it's just my own personal stuff, is when you really look at the scene and go, wait, is it real? Is it, I've seen some incredible photographs where there's no way it's a model, right? And I can't do that, but I take my hat off proverbially to the people that are just so good that they recreate that perfect slice that makes you look twice. If you're doing New England and you've spent $250 on one of those wonderful craftsman kits, and you've got the wharf scene, you're not going to see that in reality unless you've got the seagulls. So, it's that extra little detail. If you're going to go to the trouble of, spending the time and effort and building the wharf piers, throw in some seagulls.
Yeah, you got to have seagulls. They are so ubiquitous at any port or coastside scene, and it practically doesn't even matter where you are.
Exactly. Or if you're a Midwest modeler, if you're in the mountains, when the trains go through the canyons, prototypically you're going to see mountain goats. Mm-hmm. So I think that these details really do help set the time, place, era, etc. And that, I think, in turn makes everything a little bit more believable and real. Ken Bergen says there's no small details. If there are no small details, it's just as if I'm playing trains, and playing trains in quotes. If I've bothered to add the small details, it's like I'm actually modeling a slice of reality. Mm-hmm. Like the world is messy. I mean, here's Lloyd's layout, and he sent me this picture with some arrows. There's a Miniprints eagle, there's a Miniprints bunny, there's a Miniprints gopher, and a woodpecker. And I mean, I love clutter because the world is rarely ordered and simple and clean. Mm-hmm. Chris McGagan says it helps tell the story of a scene. The extra scenic details are what helps the story come to life, adding realism and believability beyond miniature trains riding around in circles. And Bob Miner says, as many have said before me, details, people, animals make a scene come alive. Even if for a brief moment, as a viewer scans through a scene while watching the train, they see the details whether they realize it or not. It makes it more believable, more real. It can also tell a story and add humor to a layout. And I mean, I loved the scene of an old broken down, abandoned caboose, with the squirrels playing on it. It's so clever, right? It's just clever. It's fun. Or, you've got the old building. Why not add, a couple of mini prints ravens? Yeah?
Sure.
They're birds in the real world. Gordy was on a show a while ago saying, I see birds in the real world all the time, but I rarely see birds on layouts. And you'll see when we get to the webpage, the miniprints.com webpage, I've added a ton of birds. It's just something that I felt I wanted on my layout.
Yeah, birds are everywhere.
All right, so it creates a connection with the viewer. So this guy, John Allen, what is it? Alaniva? Says,
I don't know.
says it adds life to the scene, adding subtle details that sometimes aren't visible to the eye, come alive when photographed. It caused the viewer to pause and observe the scene in a different light. It's fun to watch people discover those details that are there but didn't make a big deal about. And adding those details are what separates us from the Christmas tree loop crowd. So, there's my pooping pup, in this wonderful diorama by Susan. I have 2 what are called field spaniels. So, of course, for my layout, I needed to have them on the layout. There's the deer in the background. So, just hiding little things. And we'll come back to this notion of hiding things. I also metal detect. That's my other hobby. If and when I ever get outside. So I wanted a metal detectorist. So I created a metal detectorist for my own layout, and Greg used him as a wonderful added detail.
Someone has a question, Bernard.
Please.
Do mini print details need to be cleaned before painting? Apparently, Thomas just received his first order. Okay, so as I mentioned previously, there is a clinic on the website, which if you remind me, I will go to when we show the website. And if you go to miniprints.com and you scroll to the very bottom, it says, I think it says painting clinic or clinic. And that's a clinic I did for the NMRAX series about a year ago. And it goes through all the stages of painting and prepping a detail. So when you actually physically get your mini prints, there's no cleaning that you need to do in terms of dipping it in alcohol or washing it with soapy water or anything like that. One of the things I do recommend is I've done the best job I can of sort of snipping off the sprues that I showed you earlier. So if you have a little sander and you want to sand down some of the rough spots, or if it's not to your liking, you can do a little post-production work on it. But other than that, you just need to give it a shot, a rattle can shot, a primer, and then it's all outlined in the painting clinic. Okay, cool. Okay, yes, so we've been through that. There are the crabs. So Richard, did a little, you remember how small the crabs are, right? That I showed you? Oh, yeah. They were the ones with the pencil tip, weren't they? Yeah. So, these are boxes filled with them. Yeah. It's unbelievable, right? Hidden little wonderful details. And I'm looking at that and wondering how someone painted. He must have stuck them on a piece of tape or something to hold them down, right? Oh, I know. And this is why I say, I'll go back to it for a second if I can. This is why I say, no matter what I did with them, I shot some red paint on them, as a rattle can. And of course, they only turn red when you cook them. So, it never would have occurred to me, like Richard did here, to, sort of actually, he did a way better job than I ever could. So that's why they're unpainted. Okay, and I noticed a few things go by. I don't know whether Alice in Wonderland is licensed, but it's one of those things that I would probably stay away from because chances are it is. And I am using in this presentation the original illustrations from the original book
and the book is not licensed. So I try and keep an eye on this stuff. So the actual Lewis Carroll 156-year-old book and illustrations are what's in the Creative Commons. Whether or not I could actually then go and physically sell and reproduce a character, I don't know about that. Probably not, I would guess.
So there won't be any Thomas the Tank Engines forthcoming, people.
Oh gosh, no. I think that whatever Mattel or Tommy, I don't know. So there's probably a large toy company that would sue us for just talking about it.
Oh, I better be quiet then.
Okay, so let's have some fun from the modeler perspective. So up until now, I guess I've been talking a little bit about the viewer's perspective, but what does this do for me and you, the modeler? And I'll get back to the Human Cities Junctions question in a minute because I saw that pop up.
Okay.
So let's talk about what it does for the modeler. I think that stuff like this lets your imagination and creativity run loose. And I think that's important because I certainly, and I've heard a lot of modelers, sometimes you just get burnt out. Sometimes you've done wiring or you've done, plywood construction, or sometimes you just need a little fun on the layout. I know that when I was building mine and I was laying track, and wiring, oh God, I hate wiring.
How do you really feel about it?
Well, good thing I'm not on camera. Sometimes you just need to go and have a little fun, like this wonderful scene that David put up. Come on, that's fun. I talked a little bit about before, the ravens, which are really super popular. Dave's got a graveyard on this scene. And, look at, this is HO, look at the scale, like the tombstones are engraved and, make it come to life, throw a raven on there. We do lots of fun stuff, whimsical things. We'll go through some of them, but I think one of our most popular whimsical features, of course, is Sasquatch and Bigfoot, which, if you believe Facebook, seems to be making a resurgence, because I cannot log on to my Facebook account recently without seeing some brand new, live, 100% verified, accurate, just taken footage from a trail of Bigfoot. So, I want to believe he's out there, he or she actually.
Here's a here's a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
If you have two of them, is it Big Feet?
I guess it would be. Or Happy Feet, but then again, that's probably another franchise. But yes.
Yeah, don't talk about that. You'll hear from Disney or Pixar or whoever it was.
Yeah. So I love this from Rick, because Rick models in HO scale, and you can see down in the very bottom corner on the picnic table, there are some very, very tiny HO scale lobsters that someone's about to eat.
Yep.
But then Rick ordered both HO scale and O scale. And when I thought, okay, that's interesting, must have two layouts or ordering for a friend, he said, no, what I want to do is I want to use the O scale lobsters for the signage.
Yep.
And I thought, oh, that's great. That's just great. Love it.
Yeah. Because you see signs with relief like that in real life. That's a clever idea. I like that.
Yes. Yeah. I thought that's like just a really interesting, clever use of these types of things, and makes it real, makes it fun. And, here's an example of challenging the modeler's skill, which is really our next topic. Chris Ward, who's a very talented modeler up in these neck of the woods, says, much like when you draw a picture, there are levels of detail and depth that you can put into the picture. You can draw a stick man. You can make him 2D. You can make him 3D. If you add shading, colors, layers, and highlights, these minifigures are just another level that you're adding to the, quote, artwork we create. Sure, you can add trees and grass, but what if a deer was grazing in the grass? Adding mini prints figures adds another level to making our own masterpiece.
Yeah, there's definitely a texture, or I guess texture is a good word for it. You're adding to a scene and detail. That's Absolutely. A good way to put it.
This was, I mentioned, I think I alluded to it before. A lot of times people will build interiors of buildings. and throw things on the interiors of buildings or exteriors, and maybe they won't even be facing the layout, but they know they're there. So they'll throw little details on, and it makes them giggle. It makes, it's not necessarily because they're trying to do some of the other stuff. They're doing it for themselves because it's fun. Dan Pugat says, super detailing is what makes it believable. I personally spend more money on detail parts than I do structures and trains. I like to look at a layout or diorama as I was looking through the camera lens. I used to be an urban photographer and spent most of my time photographing alleyways and staircases. You always see pigeons, newspapers, rats, etc. And then he said, and this is just a comment, it's not judgment, but he says, I think there are 3 types of real modelers. Modelers that like to watch their trains go around, those who could care less about what it looks like as long as they're having fun doing ops, and those who want everything to make it look like it belongs in a museum, which I thought was a really interesting observation. And remember, we're talking about, why do people do what they do? So this is intensely personal. There are absolutely no rights or wrongs. This is not a how-to. This is just sharing observations. This is something I never thought of, and I love it. I mean, if you've got eagles, build an eagle nest. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Love that photograph. And that's what I say, when people send in photographs, it's like, wow, that's amazing. Thank you, Guy, for showing us that. Because it's like, I see something like that and I'm like, oh my God, look what Guy did. This is amazing. And then that brings us to our final topic. And I'll conclude on this, and then we'll open it up to general Q&A or layout tour, website tour fun. And I want to do a blatant plug for a friend of mine.
Okay.
There is a modeler on the other side of the country in Victoria, which is just north. It's in British Columbia, north of Washington State, by the name of Dustin Pendergast. And Dustin has some fantastic modules and is a great modeler. And he's created this character, Poor Frank. And if you haven't checked out Poor Frank, you have to. Because I got an order from this guy for one of my early critters. Probably, I think it was a bear or a moose. And the next thing I see, he sent me a picture of this character he created, Poor Frank, being attacked by my mini print. To date, I think this poor guy, Poor Frank, has been attacked, molested, abused, maligned, insulted by every single mini print animal we've created. And his stuff is incredibly funny. He's on both Facebook and YouTube. And he manages to take these little mini prints, like, for example, here, he's talking to, the little groundhogs or marmots. Bill, they're saying that we haven't paid our union dues, and I think one of them has a weapon. I made a headless horseman for Halloween, and here's the headless horseman coming down the tracks. Oh shit! Happy Halloween. Or how about the bear?
Oh,
oops.
Yeah.
And finally, uh-oh, now what do you do?
Yeah.
This guy's been cornered. So I think, nobody in my mind has really sort of taken the mini prints philosophy to the extreme level of Dustin and his Poor Frank character. And for me, like, I love it. This just tickles me.
Yeah.
Because you got to have a giggle.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes it more fun, right? Especially if someone's using your creations to make it more fun. I love it.
Poor Frank, check it out. It's a blatant plug for Poor Frank. So I'll conclude I'll conclude the presentation with something that you mentioned, John. And it was really interesting that you said this, because when I put this out there, and that's why I really want to sort of view this more as a conversation. When I put this out there and I sort of started talking about this, people started coming up with more reasons, more reasons that, people's super detail scene. And you mentioned one of them right off the top, which is to honor someone, Bernard's 3D printing, naming an industry after someone. But the other thing that came up, which I found really interesting, was a lot of people said that they model and super detail scenes to recreate a memory of their childhood. So it could be a bridge that they jumped off of, as an 8-year-old, or their grandmother's front porch.
Yes.
So I included this slide simply because I'd love to hear feedback. I mean, everybody has a very personal reason that they have the scenes and they go down the rabbit hole. So, by all means, add to the conversation, be part of the conversation. If there are photographs you want to send or comments you want to make, I'm kind of collecting these because I find them very interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. As a matter of fact, there was a layout tour recently. Well, there's actually been a few layout tours recently added to my YouTube channel here. But one that was published recently was Howard Lloyd's Claremont Docks. And he did exactly what you just said. He had the park that his grandfather used to take him to when he was a kid. And he had the depot, or, a facsimile of the depot. And he had the pedestrian bridge that went over the tracks. And he said, we used to stand right here. And he would tell me to close my eyes so I wouldn't get cinders in my eyes from the steam engines going by.
Yeah.
And there's nothing better, I think, than that kind of, or that level of a personal connection. I think there's something to be said for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe I just think too much, or maybe I have time on my hands, but this kind of stuff, start thinking about this, collecting the stories, showing the pictures, fascinates me.
For sure.
I find it's a whole new dimension and it's like the presentation. Well, why do we do what we do? I mean, if you sort of stand back and think about it, being in the basement, creating these little mini worlds, it's kind of wonderfully obsessive, as in that whole going down the rabbit hole thing. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, why do I do this? Besides the fact that it's a hell of a lot of fun.
Right. Well, the fun part matters a lot. But I think that you mentioned something in the presentation that I think is worth, commenting on, which is if you have a scene, like, for example, a friend of mine, Seth Newman, I'm sure you know Seth. Everybody knows Seth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Worked with him on the conference.
Right. He has a layout, and part of his layout is an area that depicts Niles Canyon. Niles Canyon is a place that I've spent a lot of time over the past 15, 20 years. And on his layout, I pointed to a place and said, Seth, I stood right here. And his layout, I could show him a few places on his layout in Niles Canyon where I've stood and filmed the trains going by.
Yep.
And the scenes look just like that. Which makes me care about it more as a viewer, as someone visiting and looking. I'm just really drawn in. But there's another, and I've thought about this, there's another way that happens.
Okay.
And that would be if a scene is done so well, it makes me want to go there to see what the real thing looks like. So it kind of works both ways. Like, I've been here, and I want to go there.
It's a feedback. Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, so there is something to this whole idea of creating a scene that is either so recognizable that you believe in it, or so well done that you want to experience it. And so what you're talking about really hits me, because I've experienced it in both directions. And I think that makes, personally, I think that makes a layout better. I mean, I like the whole idea of Plywood Pacifics because, like I told you earlier, I'm into operations too.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing better than being able to operate on a layout that's super detailed like that. So
it's different. I mean, there are times when I'm like, oh God, enough with this ridiculous scenery. Like, I got to get some industries up here and build a building so I can drop off some commodities and my railroad can earn its own, earn its keep, earn a living, because it's about, moving stuff from A to B and, why am I building this ridiculous creek scene? And then, so then I'll go and I'll build a building. And then I'm like sick to death of building a building. And I'm like, I just want to do some layout scenery. So, that's why this hobby really is the greatest hobby in the world. There's something for everybody, and there's so many elements to it.
Yeah. And if you're trying to do a completed layout, like it looks like you're trying to do in the background
thing.
Well, there are, but they're few and far between.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to do that, there are so many different facets and little intricate parts to do, like you're saying, finishing off a scene.
Yeah.
Well, it takes a long time to get to that, I guess, step, right? So, there's something to that. And there's a comment that just came up. I like this comment, actually. I think everybody knows Pele Soyborg.
Of course.
And I had an interview with Pele 2 years ago, something like that. And I got to tell you this funny story. I'm assuming you probably haven't heard this, because I don't assume people watch my channel. I know a lot of people do, but I don't assume that anybody I'm talking to does. I had an interview with him, and I thought, here's this guy that does these amazing scenes. I mean, his scenes are so believable. They're all fictitious, but they're so believable. And I thought, I'm going to ask him, how he does that. We're going to get like some insight, some rare insight into someone who's really a master of creating these scenes. And I said, so what's your trick? How can I do that? And he says, I model what I see. That was it.
Yeah.
That was the answer. And I thought, oh, well, it's true. I guess you really have to look. He also is a graphic artist by training.
Yes.
So yeah, but I thought that was such a great answer.
Want to see something crazy?
Absolutely.
One of my favorite things I own. So there's a long story about how I got it, but this right here is one of Pele's cars.
Okay.
And if you have a book called Done in a Day, one of his books, one of his books, this is the car that he did.
Oh, that's the one that's in the book?
This is the one that's in the book.
Oh, that's awesome. How did you manage to get
published?
that?
This is the car that's published and Done in a Day. How
did you get it?
I was at a train show, and a friend of mine, who is a good friend of his, I guess, got it from him or bought it from him, or I think that he does eBay his stuff from time to time when he's done with it. So it went from Pele to my friend, and then from my friend to me.
That's awesome.
And it has a place of honor on the layout.
And as it should.
Yeah. It's an amazing car. It's beautifully done.
Yeah, that's great. There's a question from Humanity Junction. He was wondering about distributors, but
right. So right now I ship everything from Canada, and it's not really that big a deal. So I think postage from me to you is somewhere around $7 US, depending on where you are and what you order. So, and at the end of the day, it's, people tend to order a bunch of things. So it's not a really big deal. Getting back to the thought, this is a small business. This is me, a couple of 4 3D printers, and I am not set up at this point in time for mass production, 1,000 packages sent off to someone. So I'm not really interested, nor am I set up necessarily for, listing in the Walters catalog or getting a US distributor. Where this goes in the future, who knows? But for now, it's all coming out of here. And I'm sorry there is postage, and occasionally it even gets to you. Bloody post office. I hate the post office. I'm sorry. Forgive me if you're a postal worker, but it is what it is. It's something that we all struggle with in terms of timing and cost and all the rest of it. But like any small independent manufacturer, I also don't want to give up control. I mean, I'm really obsessive about packaging and quality. Yeah. So everything that leaves here, goes out in a beautiful little mini prints box. If anyone's ever gotten something from me, I'm obsessive about breakage and packaging. And right now is very much, a boutique cottage industry that comes from me, direct from me to you.
Right.
So that's the model for now.
Sure. And the nice thing I think about the whole idea of shipping these prints is that they're light, so it's not going to be excessive heavy packaging. So
no, I mean, everything is sent US small packet air, which is really inexpensive. Like I say, you know, probably about $7-8 US, depending on what you order and where you are. And it's the disadvantage is it's not tracked. You can, of course, like if you're doing a diorama and you need a skeleton, you know, in 3 days, you can choose a more expensive shipping option. You know, we can get it to express post overnight type thing. But it's, you know, most of the stuff, I mean, I've done many orders, you know, thousands of orders. And I think 1 out of 1,000 orders ever got lost.
Yeah.
Well,
right. You know. We can complain about the post office all we want. I've had a great experience. I mean, you know, sometimes stuff arrives broken, whatever, but I've had great experiences over the years. I've been shipping DVDs through the post office for 17 more than that, but you know, train DVDs for 17 years, and we don't have any problems with the post office here. So, but someone's wondering about N scale pigeons, but
I haven't, and that's an interesting question. So can I do a quick website tour?
Yeah, let's do that. I'll bring that back up and we can take a look, because I think people should see what you're doing.
Well, and I'll answer the question here, because that's a really great opportunity to go into. Okay, so let me just go to close. Let's close that.
Shall we close it?
No, hang on. No, it's good. No, that's good. No, keep it going. Okay. So I'm going back to the website.
Should I remove this?
No, it's good. Everything's good. It should come up to the website in a second. It just takes a second to refresh. Do you see the website?
No, the problem is we're still looking at you have to reshare your screen, because we were still looking at your presentation.
Stop sharing. Okay, let me reshare. Hang on 1 second. Forgive me.
It's okay.
All right, share.
This is done live, so I think people expect it. Yeah. The bad part is they have to look at us while you're figuring out what you're doing.
Share. Yeah, it's going to get self-referential here in a minute.
Yes, it was. There we go. Okay, now we see the website. Very good. That's the picture I remember, because we had that on our convention last week.
Yes. Okay, so miniprints.com. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the webpage first, because that answers a few things. There I am in my Optivisor, so we can geek out together.
You look so serious with that light, like some kind of a robot or something.
It's actually neurosurgery.
It really is, with the size of the parts you're working on.
Yes. So at the bottom here, you will see a few areas: subscriptions, which we can talk about later, N-Scale Gallery, Painting Clinic, and blog. So I just want to go through these really quickly, because these are important areas to me. So let's start with N-Scale Gallery, because that's the question that came up. So if I click on N-Scale Gallery, this is a one-stop listing of all the things that I have currently tested and know work in N-Scale. So for example, you will see down here, and let me just go to the seagulls, that someone asked for N-Scale seagulls, peak seagulls. Here they are. So somebody asked for N-Scale seagulls, and I was able to test them, and they work, so they're listed. If you see something like pigeons and they're not up here, it means one of two things. It means either no one's asked for them and I've never tried. For example, last night, a very well-known YouTube N-scale model railroader, who will remain nameless, said, can you do N-scale moose and N-scale bears? And I'm like, wait, oh my gosh, there are no N-scale bears or moose. So I said, yeah, no problem. No one's asked for them. I've just test printed them. They look great. So they're going to get added. So either no one's asked for them, or I tried them and they don't work, but I might have tried them, 3 generations of printer ago, and now I've got technology that can do it. So in the case of the pigeons, I probably haven't tried lately. So if you have a request, either go down here to hi, how can we help you? Do you see the little button down here?
Yeah.
It's Messenger, so it pops open, a chat with mini prints box. Or, and thank you for the order. I just got an order.
Yeah, I keep hearing your mail going off.
An order just came in, so thanks for that. I don't
it's
know
probably someone watching the video.
I don't know if
our
it's one of the viewers or not. I don't want to go to it now because I don't want to interrupt the screen. I'll probably crash everything. But thank you if someone just placed an order. So we can do it. Chat with me, or better still, if you go up here to the contact page, and this goes for requests, complaints, general abuse, whatever you want. Go up here to the contact page, and there's an email right there, and it's either bernard@miniprints.ca or .com. They both go to exactly the same place. It's the same thing. So I can certainly try the N-scale pigeons. My guess is that they will be too small. I mean, you might as well just take a tiny little piece of plastic and paint it, and it'll look like a pigeon. It's like it'll be a pinhead worth of plastic. But if you want me to try it, the key thing is just remind me, because I will forget.
Yeah, somebody's making pigeons, because a friend of mine, Chris Brimley, out in the Provo area, we did a layout tour of his Hudson terminal. It's an N-scale port scene, Hudson River scene. And he has pigeons all over the layout. And I remember, because they're an N-scale, I was just marveling over that, saying, my goodness, there are hundreds of them. And he had to hand place all of it. I was like, man, that must have taken a year.
Absolutely.
We had a good laugh over that one.
So we talked about N-scale. Painting clinic, here's the painting clinic. So if you want one person's opinion on tips and tricks, here's the clinic up here. So you can click on and watch. I just link right to the YouTube clinic. So here is a 1 hour tutorial of me talking about how I do what I do. And then finally, I'll also draw your attention to two more quick things. There's a blog where I actually share my adventures in the hobby, and there's all sorts of information, about my own personal railroad. I don't blog very often. You'll see the last post, unfortunately, are my New Year's resolutions, and you can see my 7 New Year's resolutions right there.
Oh, yes.
So, model more trains, talk about trains, write about trains, do more trains, and more trains. I'm not sure. I've done a lot of 3D printing. I'm not sure I've done that. And finally, just for fun, and I saw someone comment on this, we do, actually, let me get out of the blog. We do have a Mini Prints of the Month Club, which is really, really fun. And you can get to it either here at the bottom with the little thing, subscriptions. So I'll click on that, or at the top, it's linked as well. So every month we do sort of a mystery box that goes out. It's $25 US a month, and it includes postage. So it's a pretty decent deal. I try and throw in a heck of a lot of value. I've set a goal that I try and do double value, like $50 worth of mini prints for $25 US. It's not legally binding. Sometimes it's $30, sometimes it's $60, but I try and include every month at least one animal mini print, one seasonal mini print, and one mystery mini print. And it's always more than 3 sets. So it's always at least 6 different sets of things. And it goes out on the 15th of every month. And if anyone wants to join the Mini Prints of the Month Club, it's been growing every month. So that's the bottom there.
You might end up having to conscript your son. You don't have a choice. You're gonna do this.
The Mini Prints of the Month Club is both a blessing and a curse. They're a significant number doing it now. Well, let's put it that way. I won't say exact numbers, but there are quite a few of them, and it takes forever to put these little boxes together. It's brutal. And postage, as I say, I'm spending $7-8 a month on postage. So, there's a third of the margin right there, a third of the selling price just disappears as a cost out the door. But it's also my R&D department, because I try and list, and once again, don't hold me to it, but I try and list 2 or 3 new mini prints every single Friday. Now, I didn't this last Friday, but I'm really forcing myself to constantly innovate and constantly produce for two reasons. One, because I want to create new stuff for people. And two, it's fun. I like creating things, and ideas come in and I like to get through. And, if someone says, I want a videographer, I want to do it. I don't want you to say no to you. So I'm forcing myself to create. So the Mini Prints of the Month Club becomes kind of my R&D department. So it forces me, because I know that there are a ton of people that are expecting a little box from me every month, and it can't be the same stuff that I sent out 2 months ago or 3 months ago. It forces me to really spend the time and the discipline to come up with new things. So it's the R&D department.
Yeah,
so
I like that. I like that built-in sort of R&D or requests, right? Because then you don't have to think of everything.
Yeah.
I know when I'm trying to be creative, having to think of everything is just, it's draining, right? So someone's curious about the subscription and whether or not you can expand that to include N scale, which I think is a great idea.
It is a great idea, but I'm not going to do it, and I'll tell you why. The Mini Prints of the Month Club is something that I struggle with every month, and I love it, and I will continue doing it. And I have people who've signed up for a year, and I will absolutely 100% honor those commitments, and I want to keep it going. But it's a huge amount of time. The idea was basically, if I have, make up a number, 10, 50, 100, whatever boxes, then it just becomes assembly line, right? You're just like printing 100 of something or whatever, you're putting it in boxes, you're sending it out the door. And by standardization, it becomes really fast and easy. That's actually not the case. I actually spend so much time putting these boxes together to go out the door that it eats up a week of the month. Which is great because, as I say, I'm doing the R&D behind it, and it's really fun, and I like doing it, and I get a lot of great ideas out of it. But if I were to start to do that for an O scale and an N scale and an HO scale, then that would be the month. Like, it's just so time consuming, unfortunately, that the reason I chose HO scale is, love it or hate it, it is the largest segment of the market. So
absolutely. Yeah.
It's the one where, you will get those economies of scale, and it just simply becomes too time consuming to do it, then I'd have to move the business model to simply, a month club subscription model.
Well, maybe when you conscript your son, you could expand to N scale also, because N scale is the second biggest segment. So,
and I love N scale. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if the goal is to do unique, different things that are not produced in small things, then N scale is fantastic. And I have tons of N scale customers, and it is a large part of the business. And I love and honor N scale, but right now I just can't afford the time to put together a monthly box. I mean, there's still everything I produce, I endeavor to do in N scale. I'm just not putting it together in a monthly subscription box.
Yeah. Well, I would draw people's or remind people of the picture at the bottom of your website, which actually scroll down to the bottom of your website again, just so people can see this again. Oh, it's not there. Where's the picture of you with your
oh, you want to see
Optivisor on?
Oh, yeah, homepage.
I want to see the Optivisor.
Well,
okay.
Actually, here I'll take you to that page. There's a whole about page. So if you want to read, the whole story about how we started, why we started, what we do, there's an about page which I'm loading up now.
Yeah,
and that's me.
That's an example of what I wanted to remind people of. That's the guy cleaning all the flash off of the mini print before he mails it to you. So, people could complain and whine about it. Oh, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. It's like, well, if you had to clean off hundreds of these little things, I can't imagine the eye strain you get from doing that all day. I'd have to take a break every 5 minutes.
It's just time consuming. I mean, it's, at night when, the kids are playing video games and, my wife is watching Netflix, I'm just, every night till midnight, just cleaning off flash.
Yeah. right? I mean, that's labor intensive, and you don't have the factory in China with 12 people doing that for you. So I get it, man. I mean, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is, and it's fun. But the economy of scale for and I have heard, there are N scalers that want the mini prints of the month club, and I'm like, okay, like just every month go on and order, an N scale item, and that's there is a lot of
That's your club. Just order one every month.
Order one a month. I'll do a PayPal debit for $25 a month, and you can go on and order something. But I want to show before we run out of time, and I know we've got like a 10 minutes left, so I can
something like that.
Yeah. So I'll just show you some of the categories and some of the things on the website if you're interested.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go through that. And I do want to throw out the notion for people that are interested in asking you questions. We do have, I want to make some time, but I have a hard stop in about 15 minutes that we need to adhere to. So
let me I'll do this in 3 minutes or less. If you go to shop, you will see the following categories. Birds. And there are, as I mentioned before, lots of birds.
Yeah.
So there are everything from puffins to flamingos to pelicans, you name it. You can explore penguins. A lot of people have hid penguins on their layout because you'd never find them in anywhere that has a train, because I think penguins are only Antarctic or really deep South America. So, or maybe South Africa. But anyway, lots of fun stuff on birds.
Hey, it could be a zoo scene.
Could be a zoo scene. Land animals is the biggest. It's where it all started. You've got your elephants, alligators. It's all alphabetical. When you click something, for example, I'll just take you through here. Click on the beavers, which started it all. What you'll see is what you get. 3 standing, 3 sitting up, 3 swimming. You can choose the scale here. The beavers are available in N scale, HO scale, S scale, and O scale. Everything we produce is available in HO, S, and O. By definition, the vast majority are available in N. So then we go, just to give you a quick tour, we've got our aquatic animals. That would be, things like the fish, the crabs, the lobsters, all that stuff we talked about, and domestics. I won't get into all of these. People are the area that I'm most excited about. And this is where I think we're really growing. And this is where I want to move it. I mentioned custom crews. So this is where you'll find custom crews 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is where you'll find, the forensic investigators and the detectorists, all these types of things. The fun area are the oddities. And this is where you'll find some of the weird stuff, the stuff that people tend to get a giggle out of, the mythical creatures or the sort of the weird things. Because of last year, I had to create a plague doctor because, what would 2020 be without a plague doctor? We've got flying pigs, things like that. And then finally, objects and vehicles. So you can explore that at your own leisure. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can talk questions.
Yeah, let's ask if people have questions.
Sure.
Here's a good question, I thought. How do you do these animals? That is a good question.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of difficult shapes. Some are easy, difficult shapes, and some are difficult shapes. I'll tell you what I'm starting to do more of, which is really interesting, is 3D scans. So I'm starting to do a lot of, I'll answer Andy in a minute.
Yeah, we'll get to that one.
I have, I'll give you a great example. There is a hound dog on the website. And that hound dog came about because my parents have an old, probably 150, 200-year-old bronze sculpture, about that big, one of those old bronzes of a hound dog. So we all have 3D scanners in our pockets because the iPhones do a pretty decent job of scanning things. You can get software for them. So I downloaded one of these scanner apps. I went around this sculpture of a hound dog. It's a 200-year-old bronze, right? It's an antique. There's no copyright on the thing. So I was able to get a rough shape, enough of a shape that I could go in and clean it up. So that's how the hound dogs were created. Some things, they're programs. There's a great program called Blender. It's a free 3D design program. It's the most complicated program I've ever used. I'm just scratching the surface. The learning curve is pretty tough, but it's the one that I use for designing most of the organic shapes. And a lot of it is like clay. You break everything into components. You start with a block, and then you start with another block, and then you do another block, and then you start molding it and moving it, and you just manipulate. 3D designing is much more difficult than 2D designing, and as a 2D designer, you have to think about it completely differently.
Yeah.
Andy, okay. A lot of things. There have been some scenes from movies that are questionable scenes that I will not produce, and I don't even want to talk about them because they are controversial and can be interpreted the wrong way. I know that the person was asking for something that wasn't offensive, but I don't want to be the guy that produces a certain scene because it could have been taken out of context. The funniest pornographic thing that I have ever been asked to design is somebody came up with the ideas of gnomes doing strange things to each other. Garden gnomes, pornographic garden gnomes. So I like the idea of garden gnomes, so I thanked them for the garden gnomes idea, and I thought that was really clever. And I said, I'll do a series of garden gnomes, but I wasn't exactly going to do the garden gnomes in the positions. Oh, no, Cindy wants garden gnomes.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, you can make the garden gnomes, and they can place them however they want, right?
Yeah, well, these were very, very graphic garden gnomes.
Yeah. No, yeah.
But you know what? I mean, it's funny because you do get, their Prizer and other companies has a great line of sort of those types of, I don't want that. Like, if anything, I want to go the other way. Like, a lot of people said, I'll come and I'll tell you where I am going to go. Female model railroaders. Like, there are a lot of women that are female model railroaders. I've got some great prototypical pictures of it. So a lot of people are saying to me, how come all the model railroaders out there are guys? There are women that work on the railroad, model them. So someone else can do the typical 50, 60-year-old male scenes on layouts that we all get a giggle out of. Fine. That's not my market niche, and it's no value judgments, whatever. I'm not fundamental on any of this stuff. But I want to go the other way. I want to do like prototypical women in, where you would see them working the railroad. That to me is more fun and more realistic and more believable than, whatever.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah. So that's my take on that. Next question.
Yeah, right.
Next.
Well, they want female rail fans too. How about that?
Yeah, female rail fans, and geez, that's, there's a lot of stuff like, and rail fanning, exactly, and all sorts of stuff. So yes, all coming. As I say, the list of to-dos is longer than you can imagine.
Sure, that takes a lot of time. So
yeah,
there's a good question about whether people can get stuff to print it at home. Now, I'm sure I know the answer to this question, but I think it's a legit question.
It is a legit question, and every now and then someone will say, will you sell me an STL? And I'm like, sorry, no.
Yeah,
Nope.
That's proprietary, right? I can't imagine why somebody would do that.
No, I'm just not going to, this stuff is incredibly time consuming, and it's not even the designing that's time consuming. It's that you design it like 3D printing, and we haven't talked about the process of 3D printing, but 3D printing is an incredibly experimental, iterative process. And what I mean by that is you design it, you take it downstairs, you print it, it fails. You go back upstairs, you redesign it, you reorient it, you take it downstairs, you print it, it fails. Like, it's not necessarily the time it takes to create the object. Like, it's like the architect that designs the glass house, and it's beautiful, and then the builder looks at it and says, you can't build that, it'll fall down, it's glass. So there's an art and a science to this thing, and you can design it, but then getting the thing to print out in a reproducible, reproducible manner on a printer is a whole nother story. So I put a lot of heart and soul into it. And at the end of the day, it's a labor of love, but it is my business right now. It's how I feed my kids. You know, it's all I've got. I mean, this is a full-time gig for me. Yeah. So I'd like to at least, I'll never break even on the hours spent, but I'd at least like to guard my IP and try and feed my family. So that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that could lead to other things too, but we're not going to go there.
Yeah. So right now it's you can buy. Now, if you want, I mean, the reason people want to buy STLs is that they want 1,000 of something or 100 of something. The prices are negotiable. I mean, the prices, if you need 1,000 seagulls, you're not going to spend, 500 times whatever the price is. If you need a bunch of something, and it's a reasonable, I mean, I'll do a volume discount quote, So
yeah, no, that makes sense.
I'm not releasing the IP out into the world for free printing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that, it's unfortunate that it's just one person, because you can do a volume order. It's still going to be the same amount of work for you. So you kind of have to pick and choose, right? Which orders you're going to be able to do. Because if somebody wants 1,000 seagulls, that's going to take you a long time.
Yes and no. It really depends. I mean, it takes me a long time to snip them. But if someone wanted 1,000 seagulls, I'd say, okay, I've done big runs, big-ish runs. Big run for me is a couple hundred of something. But there are ways to figure it out. There are ways to engineer it, or stuff like that.
Well, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking for more questions off to the side here. I'm kind of out of questions, but I do think that only because I know we have a stop and I don't want to start going down another rabbit hole, right? But I do like the conversation, and I think that it would be fascinating to talk to you in more detail about 3D printing, because 3D printing, I think, has the potential to be even more disruptive to the hobby. And I mean that in a good way, right?
Yeah.
Giving people more variety and stuff. Than I think we've even realized yet, because
we could do 2 hours just on the trials, tribulations, good, bad, and ugly. Thank you, D&H Railroad Modeler from Western Australia. If you are indeed in Western Australia, which I don't know whether you are, I'm assuming, I have lots and lots of Australian customers. And I will say that we do ship internationally, and I'm really proud of the fact that we've done, I don't know, like 20, 30 countries. It's really fun. All of a sudden an order will come in from like Italy or Czechoslovakia or Australia, or, it's like, wow, it's like cool. It's like the stuff goes out into the world and takes on a life of its own. Yeah, so yes, absolutely.
That's the power of the internet, right? Your audience suddenly is worldwide and not just local anymore.
Yeah.
So,
or domestic. Nick said, what made me do a Lionel print? And I'll tell you right now, on Monday, I will actually be on my debut on the A Modeler's Life, which, another wonderful broadcast like yourself, not audio podcast, not visual. And he lives in the same neck of the woods that I do. And so I'll be on the program. And when we were on the program, we joked around about scanning him. And so because he's in the same geography, I was able to scan him. He is a cancer survivor, and it's not a secret. He makes, he talks about that. So every year he does a walk to support a cancer charity. So on this broadcast on Monday, we came up with this wacky idea of scanning him. And I said that we would scan him and I would print them out, and I would donate all time and money and materials, and it would be a fundraiser for his cancer charity. So that answers that question. So it was just a bit of fun and a way to raise money. And we've raised like $1,000 so far.
And it's a good cause too. That's definitely a worthwhile cause. So thanks for doing that.
So now we have to figure out how I'm going to get to California to scan you.
I don't have a cause like that, though.
No.
I mean, I've joked over the years, save the foster kittens, but I don't have a real nonprofit for that. Not yet, anyway. But I can definitely send you some pictures if I can get a camera that won't break when they take pictures of me. But that's also a different story.
Kangaroos exist for sure.
This is an interesting question that I know the answer to without even thinking about it, but maybe we should make this our last question. So that
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that, and I'll tell you why. The same way as I would be really pissed off if someone copied my stuff, and I don't think it's fair, I wouldn't copy someone else's. And the other thing is, my mission is to come up with new original stuff. I mean, I don't want to do something that someone else has done, because if someone else has done it and it's good, I feel really strongly that I want to do stuff that's new and original. It drives me crazy. My own personal point of view, when people in the hobby just like rip off each other. I think there's enough room in this hobby for everyone. I don't do battery boxes or propane tanks or firecracker antennas or spot welding cylinders because other people do it. Like, we don't need to all fall over each other. Like, there might be some inadvertent overlap. I'm not perfect, but I'm not going to go out and copy people or scan other people's stuff or try and reproduce other people's stuff, because I just don't think that's cricket. I just don't think that's cool. And there are people that do it, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. It's just not
another rabbit hole.
Another rabbit hole. And no, I never sleep.
Yeah, think of it this way. Yeah, that was another one. Do you ever sleep ever? There's another reason to not scan and reproduce other people's work, because that's their intellectual property. Yeah. And that's the same as someone downloading a video of mine and then re-uploading it, right, as their own. It's like, no, that's just stupid. Now,
if you tell me that Prizer, in this case, has a figure of a cowboy, but they only have a figure of a cowboy riding a horse, and you want a figure of a rodeo cowboy with his arms up in the air, whatever, then I'd say, okay, that's a cool idea, rodeo. And I'm actually working on a set of rodeo for someone. And then that becomes a whole nother thing where I would design something myself from scratch. So if you have something that you're trying to achieve, then I think it's cool. If it doesn't exist out there, I'll try and do it.
Right.
But that's a whole nother, I'm not going to sort of take something and deconstruct it and copy someone else's work.
Right. And that's what the question really was. Would you scan somebody else's figure and redo it? It was like,
no.
Yeah. Anyway, I appreciate your time, Bernard.
It's fun. Yeah.
Just as I expected, we've almost been going for 2 hours, and I feel like we've barely started. So yeah, maybe we'll have you on again sometime. I do these TSG live model railroad shows. I don't know, whenever I have time, really. It's been about once every other month so far since I started it. So maybe I'll hit you up again in a few months after we've had some more other people on. But I like it, though, because it expands. Part of my, I guess, mission is to expand and make everything more accessible for people and more mainstream, so that anybody who wants to get involved can do so. And I think what you're doing is also doing that. So,
well, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, I was a fan of TSG before, a subscriber and a fan before today, obviously. And it's a thrill to be on. And I also want to say that I'm hugely appreciative, and we haven't talked about it, but that's another time. Thank you for all the work you did on the convention, because I was there, I was an attendee, and I loved it, and it was brilliant.
It was a lot of work. Thank you for the acknowledgement. I appreciate that, and I've been hearing that from a lot of people over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And what a great success. I thought it's funny you should mention that. We're going to have a live show tomorrow it's a panel discussion, because I do the panel discussion once a month also. That's going to come on at 4 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow, where we're going to talk about sort of the things that we learned and maybe even what the future of this idea of virtual conventions, what's the future of it? What's the outlook on doing these things for other conventions in the future? Because I learned from that experience last week that there are a lot of people who just can't get to in-person conventions, who really value the opportunity to participate in a hobby that they love with other people.
Yep.
And if you live out in the boondocks and you can't do that. So that's the answer to being able to do that, is being able to attend virtually. So that's another. Yeah. And thank you for your participation as a vendor focus for that. That was
and
really
thank
good.
you.
We could just thank each other for the rest of it.
Okay, I know you gotta go on. Speaking of which, you gotta go. So I gotta go and snip little things and get orders out the door. And thank you.
Get back to work. Thanks for joining us.
Yes.
I'll put you back down in the basement, and we'll talk to you sometime soon. Thanks, Bernard.
Thanks so much, John.
All right. Take care, man. Oh, wasn't that great? I cut him off. He was saying bye-bye. Sorry about that, Bernard. So with that, we've come to the end, unfortunately. And definitely want to have Bernard back on sometime, because I think we could talk about a lot of things and it would be interesting. So thank you all for watching. And like I said, tomorrow at 4 p.m., we are having that live panel discussion. And of course, we'll take questions just like we always do, just like we did here today. And I think it's an important topic. And then next week, a week from now, we're going to have Model Trains Galore, the next episode of that. So here come the credits. I'll see you all next time.